I go behind my car and start backing up. And because I know he's probably charging me, he has this brick and he started running up on me and he's about to throw it and bash it into my head. And so I gain distance, step back, and I pull out my duty weapon.
All right, gang, let's talk about dry fire. Dry fire is an important part of anyone's training regimen. We recommend you pick up the Manus Firearms Training System. The Manus X is a phenomenal little tool in your toolbox. Manus has been a longtime supporter of active self-protection, and we are super grateful for their support and their product. We found it to be so valuable in our own shooting work. You're going to get immediate, measurable visual feedback. They can take so much time out of the learning curve of dry fire, and this product is worth every penny, in our opinion. What gets measured gets improved, and this helps you measure every aspect of dry and live fire. Visit them at mantis.com and let them know you heard about them on the Active Self-Protection Podcast. All righty, gang. Welcome back to the Active Self-Protection Podcast. I am your host, Mike Williver. I am your favorite former Fed. With us today, a new friend of mine, Taylor Bates. Taylor is married with 3 strapping young boys. I should rephrase that. He's not married to 3 young boys. He's married and he has 3 young boys. Okay, let's just be clear. And he lives in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. He is a experienced security officer, and he reached out to us and said, hey, I have a story to tell, and there's a video. So this video should be out on the main channel when you're hearing this. And if you're coming over from the main channel after watching the video, welcome. We're glad to have you. Taylor, thank you so much for being willing to sit down and talk with us.
Yeah, man. No, it's my pleasure, man. I love it. A great fan of the show. I love you, John, man. You're awesome.
Yeah, John and I were I was filming with him yesterday doing the intros and the mid-rolls for the badge cams. And we're just talking about the podcast and how well it's doing. And we're so stoked that it's doing as well and it's maintaining. And I want to thank everyone out there for listening and for leaving a review and a rating on Spotify or Apple or wherever it is you listen. It really helps us out, and I appreciate it. And please continue to listen. And if you have any questions or concerns or ideas, hit me up at mike@activeselfprotection.com. And it's just me. There's no one answering my email, so I will read your email and get back to you. So back to you, Taylor. You've been in the security industry, I assume, the whole time in Florida for about 5 years in total. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Yep. It's been 5 years in total. Seen a lot of things. It's been a journey for sure. And yeah.
So what's the company you work for, unless it's your company? We didn't actually go over that. What sort of security? Because there's different kinds of security. There's everything from mall security to someone who works at a bank or someone who works at an event or someone who works at a convenience store or whatever. So what generally your company, what does kind of security jobs do they cover?
Well, my company currently, they do all sorts, but I've worked everything, under the sun. But currently I work at a convenience store, like a gas station, kind of in a rougher neighborhoods here. So it's been a circus, but still got to apply all that I can professionally. And yeah.
So what made you decide to get into the security field? Do you remember?
Yeah, I just, I actually was homeless before that. And I did a lot of odd jobs. And I just wanted to, serve my community and serve others. I kind of goes with my faith too. I'm also a Christian as well, but I just, I want to do something higher than myself, kind of serve other people. And I definitely know we need some people out there kind of, to be security, especially in the times we're living in,
Sure. I mean, and it doesn't, probably isn't a coincidence that this spike in crime coincides with the demoralization and defunding of the police all over the country. So,
oh yeah, they quit their jobs in numbers over here.
Oh, really?
We actually had to pull people from New York. Yeah, DeSantis, our governor, had to pull people from New York to come over here because people were quitting in droves.
Wow,
so
that's a shame. Yeah. And you know who's quitting? Honestly, for the most part, is experienced officers who are able to retire early or whatever. So we're losing a lot of experience in the process for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Ask me how I know.
Yeah.
Well, I get a lot of cops come to my job. They don't even want to take our calls. Sometimes they won't even show up because it's so bad.
Wow. Well, that's a shame to hear. So prior to being in security, did you have any sort of self-defense or firearms background prior to going into this field?
Well, yeah. I grew up in Kalispell, Montana, and I actually was on a kind of a little farm. And I used to go hunting all the time ever since like 15 years old. I took hunter's ed. And so I kind of am familiar with, all sorts of firearms and such. So
if you're a young man, if you grow up in Montana, don't they just issue you a 30-06 when you're 10 years old?
You think that would be standard, right? You just sit there, you know, blow stuff up and yeehaw.
Yeah,
But
Montana's
yeah,
still God's country. Although a
oh
lot of
yeah,
people are moving in there in Wyoming to try and ruin it, but whatever, it's a
yeah,
story for
I
another
know.
time.
Yeah, the sad facts.
So, how long ago did the event in question happen?
I want to say, if I remember correctly, it's gonna be about a month ago, to be honest. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
So, talk to us too about where you're working, the kind of neighborhood it was in, and what your responsibilities were that day.
well, my obviously my responsibilities of any security guard is observe and report. That is the main one. Although we all know if we're cops or security, sometimes it does cross that border when people get violent.
Right.
So, yeah, my main job was, you know, reporting and do all that. So I reported the situation. First of all, I called the cops about it, and then, you know, obviously I'm going to make a report after the whole thing's done.
So, walk us through like what led you to call the
Mhm.
police. What happened and who?
Okay, so this guy goes by the name of Roger. He's one of those people that just keep coming back to the store, even though he's been trespassed by police. We've told him numerous times to leave. He's threatened people, hurt people when they don't give him money. He panhandles, you know, takes drugs, and is very hostile towards people and will just target people.
We all know that guy who hits you up for change at the gas pump. So,
Yeah,
is
can I just get a dollar?
yeah,
So
is
yeah,
he a homeless transient person?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically, it was a normal day, just like every other day at the gas station. I'm just waiting for an incident to happen.
Right.
And then I see him on property, so I politely ask him, "Hey, sir, you can't be here. I've told you numerous times. I don't know why you keep doing this. You know, it doesn't need to go this far. You can either leave now, or I'm gonna have to call the cops." And of course, he's like, "Oh, fight me," and you know, just saying a whole bunch of stupidness. So I immediately just call the cops. I give the address, description, you know, what he's doing, that he's been previously trespassed. And I just, after that, I give him the info. I say goodbye, still dealing with the man. And then I finally, he, I keep telling him in the gas station, he's at the pumps, the gas station here,
Hmm.
and he's trying to ask for change. So I have to escort him off property. And I know you guys are gonna say, why did you get kind of close to him? I usually keep 6 feet distance, but I had to actually, you know, kind of escort him and come alongside him and kind of, you know, wave him off.
Encourage him.
Yeah. So that's my job description. So I just was talking to him, kept saying, "Hey, you need to leave, you need to leave," and he kept stopping, turning around and trying to face me. And then he said, "Fight me," and he was saying racial slurs. "I'm gonna kill you," you know, the usual.
Is this something that's happened before? I have to ask.
Oh,
With
it
him?
happens. It literally happens 20 times a day where I'm at. I've
Okay.
had probably just today, actually, 5 people say they want to kill me.
Oh, I
And
meant Roger specifically.
oh, yeah, he comes back almost every day. So,
Okay.
yeah.
So you're escorting him off the property, and he keeps turning
Mhm.
around to challenge you and square off and
Yep.
ask you to fight him. So what happens then?
I told him not gonna happen. Keep it moving. Keep it moving. And then he's like, "Oh, you know," just says more stuff. And I told him, "Hey, listen, if I've already told you numerous times to get off the property. You just threatened to kill me. So if you don't get off the property expeditiously, like in 5 more seconds, I'm gonna have to pepper spray you if you turn around again." He kept walking, walking, turns around, tries to square up, and gets way too close to me. So I say, "Get back." He wouldn't get back. So you know, I stepped back a little, and then I just pepper sprayed. Honestly, I just let him have the whole can because, you know, I just it's just too much. He's already hostile. He's threatened people before, so I need to, you know, to get him away from me and get that threat neutralized, the non-lethal way.
Hmm.
So I did that. He gets upset and he gets the message like, "Oh wow, this I got the jerk sauce today. I
Right.
want to run away." So he starts running. He goes behind the building. My the employees to where I work at a gas station are all, some of them are outside. I got bystanders like, "Wow, what's going on?" And then so I start walking back. You know, I'm looking over my shoulder still just in case. And then I start walking towards the door. And then I hear somebody, "Hey, hey, look out." And I've already seen someone coming from the corner vision of my eye. And I'm, you know, paying attention to my surroundings because I have to. And then So my car is sitting right next to me. So I dip between my car and another car to gain some distance. I go behind my car and start backing up. And because I know he's probably charging me, he has this brick that's probably it's bigger than a normal size, brick to lay houses with. And I don't know where the heck he found it, but he found it behind there somewhere at our gas station. And he started running up on me, and he's about to throw it and bash it into my head. And so I gain distance, step back, and I pull out my duty weapon. I point it at him and I say, "Get back, get back. I'm not playing with you. Get back." And then he looked at it and he immediately goes, "Oh my goodness," and starts running back. I gave him a couple seconds to get back, and if he wasn't going to get back, Lord,
Right.
gonna have to stand your ground law on that one. I know, Florida. So
Yeah, I mean, it's just simple self-defense.
yeah.
Person is already threatened to injure or try to kill you, now has produced a large blunt object and is coming towards you.
It's on video. So
yeah, the idea there is you can't run away forever. So
yeah.
Talk to me really quick about your firearms experience as it relates to the security guard job. We had a young man from Los Angeles not long ago who walked us through his experience worked at a pot shop out there. So he was armed security. He was he was in civvies, but he had like a outer carrier on. I'm sure it said security on it. And when he talked to me about the requirements for a security guard to carry a firearm, I was frankly shocked at how low the standard was for them. So to walk me through the process in Florida, how does that work, and how long does it take, and what's the qualification like?
It's honestly, you take for your what's called a D license. It's unarmed. Here you have to do a 46-hour course. And you have to go through a written test, and you have to, for your G license, you have to take a 4-hour range test for shooting your duty weapon to make sure you're proficient with 38 special and a semi-automatic pistol, 9mm, because that's usually the standard for over here. And then you have to qualify with that, which is surprising because, what I find very interesting, I like to further my practice and make sure I'm on the ball with things and sharp and on point. But a lot of security guards once they do that course, that's all for them. They just are super lazy. And then you start to see, there's 50% of security guards who, in my personal opinion, are super lazy, don't care about any more training. And then those who want to take it further and make themselves more proficient in, their line of duty. So, that's what's required. 46 hours, I believe. Yeah. And then a 4 hours worth of range time.
Well, that sounds like a lot more than the other guy had. So that's
really, oh my gosh, it's lower than that. Oh God.
Yeah. Yeah. It was pretty shocking. So,
oh my goodness.
So at this point, I think you did back up a little bit to try to give him a chance. You drew your gun. You black hole this guy, and he decides this isn't worth it. Does he drop the rock, turn around, and leave, and he's gone at this point?
Yeah. Surprisingly, he runs still with a rock, and he's running back. But he started to hesitate as you can't see on camera, but he hesitated for a little bit. That's why I kept walking towards him with my duty weapon, because he was sitting there. So he ran back for just a second and paused. So I kept telling him to get back, and that's why I kind of forced him off property. He went around the corner. I started walking back, but kept looking over case again, and then I went back inside, and then I started making my report, a little bit after, waited to see if he'd come back at all, just in case. So
sure. Yeah. Now, is there a requirement in Florida if you draw your weapon in the line of duty security officer that you have to report it to the police or anything like that, or is it just?
I absolutely 100% think you should, and I do believe you actually have to. I'm going to give every description possible, but if that something like happens, you definitely do have to tell them what's going on when they arrive on scene as well.
Okay, so do the police actually come out to respond to this?
It's funny because I called one, and he arrived on scene, had a big attitude with me. He's like, I got it. He wouldn't even listen to anything I had to say. I'm like, oh, okay. I just gave him the basic run of the mill. He's like, okay, I'm gonna go look for him. Turns out that guy never looked for him. I had to call back the police because it's been an hour now. And I'm like, what's going on? I just had an incident, and, I'm just expecting something to be done. I'm just trying to figure out if he, got arrested, because I'd like to press charges. because it's a, he's a habitual offender and has threatened a lot of people, including myself. They tell me that, oh, actually they did spot him, behind your work, but they just told him to leave. Nothing was done. I was like, oh my goodness. So unfortunately, what I deal with is the same back and forth all day. It's a waste of my time, waste the cops' time, because I can't really do nothing, and they can't really do nothing. We're not really backed by our company. I'm not backed by cops. And unfortunately, it's just kind of like everybody's for themselves type of world now.
Yeah, this is an age old story when it comes to security. I always did my best as a law enforcement officer to be kind and treat security officers as professionals and treat them with respect and dignity they deserve. So, and I think you're about right. About half the security guards I encountered were complete and utterly worthless at their job. They were out of shape. They were not squared away. They couldn't speak professionally. And then the other half were people who were taking the job seriously and trying to do their job with some efficiency. The problem is, frequently law enforcement looks down on security, and that's a problem as well. Just like I treat every victim the same, I treat every suspect the same with the same respect I would expect. That's the way I always worked with. And I worked security prior to being in law enforcement, so I know that armed and armed. Used to be sitting in a Section 8 housing project just outside of Washington D.C. at 3 in the morning. It's not a lot of fun. So nothing happens. They see the guy. They tell him to come back. Now, has this actual same individual been back to your store since then? Back to the gas station?
Almost every day, yes.
Okay. So any more threats though?
Yeah, all the time. He does the same stuff all the time. Not as to, as much as with the rock towards me, but he still does the same stuff, makes verbal threats, gets close. And it's one of the most frustrating things in security is most companies will throw you under the bus if some legal matter happens.
Yep.
And the thing I think we really need to change, and I can't stress this enough, it's, bouncers can physically escort people out if they're being very hostile and doing stuff like that. But when it comes to normal security, armed security or unarmed, we can't do that. And suddenly we're going to get sued by everybody and their mom. So I'm like, it's very frustrating when people are being hostile, threaten to kill you. The employees there, they've actually put hands on people before, not on my shift. It's very frustrating. And I think we as security guards should get a little bit more rights. But I know there's goofballs security that have no idea what the hell they're doing.
That's an interesting point that you made about bouncers. I never really thought about it, but you're right. Bouncers actually frequently go very overboard when they're 80, 60 and drunk. And I wonder if that's because maybe there isn't any sort of governing body for bouncers, but there is for security professionals. I don't know. Maybe that's the difference, but I've seen bouncers go way overboard.
Big time. But I deal with literally like people who do meth and crack all day, literally on Flocka, who are not working with a sane mind. So therefore, how can you, de-escalate if you're dealing with someone who's already out of their mind? You can't. You could try the best you can, but they're not going to listen to you, do anything you say. And most of these people, I'm in a rough spot in like the neighborhood, to where most of these people only know violence. The only thing they're going to respond to is violence. I'm not, perpetuating, get violent, but I'm just saying we need to be able to have a little bit more rights when it comes to doing certain stuff to keep people in our vicinity safe, our store safe, and, security guards included. And I think most people are quitting security and police because we don't have rights to defend ourselves like we used to. And unfortunately, in my personal opinion, there's just too many people out there who think they have every right in the world, who are entitled, and just think they can steal, be violent towards anybody, and do whatever the heck they want with no consequences in the world. Because unfortunately, in my personal opinion as well, this system doesn't really back up innocent people. It actually helps people be criminals, and it gives them special rights to be criminals more than people who want to do right. That's just what I've seen. I might be wrong, but that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely a perception. I always argue with people about perception versus reality, because if you watch CNN all day, if you watch Fox all day, if you watch any one of these cable networks all day, or you are on name the website, it's a politically based website, and you hear the ultra conservative or the ultra liberal view all day long, you're going to get the impression that things are worse than they are. But I have to say,
Yeah,
I think you're onto something when you say that there really isn't an uptick in crime. I think the crime stats back that up, and part of the
yeah.
problem is, like you said, the demoralization of people
Hmm.
in this profession. Uh, then prosecutors who aren't willing to prosecute things because
Right.
I'll tell you right now, Taylor, your case that was somewhere between aggravated assault and attempted murder. Had he swung that could be
Absolutely.
argued to be attempted murder. So the fact that nothing was done is quite depressing. Let me switch gears for a second. Uh, After this happened, I know you were already training and doing your best to get your skill set where it needs to be. Have you trained more as a result of this incident? And how's that affected your work life?
I mean, I've always been training more. I've tried to, sometimes my finances are kind of sketched right now, but because the economy, but I go to the range almost, every month or sooner if I can. And I watch, your guys' videos, the ask videos, and I try to take what I can and apply it. I'm always looking at different stuff, trying to, I'm actually trying to get courses to where I can get more proficient with everything, just whatever I can to better myself, and maintain, a good security guard position, and just for better myself and other people.
Taylor, I want to thank you for taking the time to reach out to us and send us that video. Again, folks, that video should be live over on the main channel. John will have broken it down, and I can already tell you he found it to be a judicious, display of force and use of force in your case. So that's the good news. Taylor, thank you so much for coming on, and I appreciate it. If you got my email, if you need anything, let me know.
Definitely. Thank you, brother. Thanks for having me on, man.
All right, gang. Welcome back to the Gutowski Files featuring our good friend Stephen Gutowski. Stephen is the founder of TheReload.com. He is the host of the Weekly Reload podcast, which you can find on all of your finer and not so fine podcast outlets and on YouTube to include some clips. So if you're on a little break at work and you want to check out The Reload on YouTube, you can do that as well and get a little snippet out of one of the videos. Stephen, welcome. Thanks for being here, buddy.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. So this week we are discussing an article by your reporter Jake Fogelman. This just came out yesterday. Today's the 31st. This will be a couple days old by the time people hear this, but it's still very relevant. Title of the article is Federal Judge Blocks Colorado County's Assault Weapons Ban. Other localities agree to halt enforcement. And right off the bat, what I found interesting was, and I'm pretty versed in civics. I understand how the government works, state, local, federal, municipal, the three branches of the federal government, the two halves of the Congress. I had no idea that a county or a municipality could have a specific firearms related law, even to include an assault weapons ban. I don't think I knew that was a thing. So there's a county in Colorado that instituted its own assault weapons ban. I don't know what the teeth are for that, but they did it. And this federal judge basically blocked the ban. And at least for the time being, other local areas around this county or in this county are agreeing to stop enforcing it. So talk to us about what this means to our Second Amendment community.
Yeah, so the reason that it's probably surprising to you, and I'm sure a lot of other people, is that most states have what are called preemption laws that require all state they make it so that the localities can't pass state laws that are stricter than, or sorry, they can't pass gun laws that are stricter than the state law. So in most states right now, your city, your county can't pass an ordinance that says, AR-15s are, the sale of AR-15s are banned here. But in Colorado, that has changed over the last couple of years. They repealed much of their state preemption law a little while back. And now a lot of localities have passed stricter gun laws than what are in place at the state level. And so Boulder County was one of them. That's where this ruling is from. You also had a couple of towns and cities, Denver, Superior, Colorado, and a couple other ones had passed these sorts of rules because basically they're, obviously most cities are more liberal than the larger state that they're in.
Right.
And so
yeah, New York City versus New York State. for
Right.
example.
They're inclined to pass stricter gun laws because of that. And you see this fight oftentimes in places like Philadelphia, which wants much stricter gun laws, but has Pennsylvania has a preemption law. And so sometimes you'll get cities across the country that'll pass ordinances anyway that are technically illegal under state law. And then usually what'll happen is they get challenged and they lose and the ordinance gets wiped away. That's what was happening in Colorado before the state repealed its preemption law. And that's why they repealed it. So this ruling is significant for a couple of reasons. The first one is that it's another sign that maybe this strategy of gun control groups to push local ordinances is not really going to work out the way that they'd hoped, because even where they've had success, like in Colorado, the ordinances are getting struck down anyway, under federal statutes instead of state ones now. So you sort of still have the same outcome there. But the other and probably more important outcome of this case, the one that's going to affect more people in the long run, I think, is the fact that this judge who struck down this assault weapons ban and the judge who struck down the one in Superior, Colorado before this were both Democratic appointees. So one was an Obama appointee, the first one. This one from this ruling is actually a Biden appointee. And so they're citing the new standard set down by the Supreme Court in Bruin, which is what we've talked a lot about, right, before on the podcast, and of course covered a ton over at the Reload. But that's pretty significant because it gives you some insight perhaps into where the fight over assault weapons bans, AR-15 bans, AK-47s, when we say assault weapons, it's a political term, it's sort of nebulous, but it differs depending on what the definition is, where the ban is in place, because like California's, the definition for assault weapon is different from, say, Maryland's or these Colorado laws or Massachusetts. They all kind of vary, or the one that was passed in the House. So it's a fairly nebulous term, but generally speaking, you can think of it as AR-15s, AK-47s, and similar firearms. It's more expansive than that, but is a good shorthand just to clear up the language issue there, the definition issue, because that obviously comes up a lot. But the fact that these two judges said that Bruin makes it so you have to find a historical analog for these laws, and they couldn't find one, or at least they weren't presented with a good argument for how there is a historic analog to ban, these popular rifles. I mean, the AR-15 is the most popular rifle in the country. There's 24.4 million ARs and AKs in circulation right now, according to the National Shooting Sports Foundation's very, very common rifle. And so that probably says a lot moving forward for the other cases like the one that's pending in California right now, or in the one that the Supreme Court sent back down in Maryland after Bruin. So I think that's the bigger implication here.
We were talking earlier about the idea of people being familiar with civics, familiar with how their government works, and I learned something today. Repeat the law that says the state and the locality can't have super disparate laws.
Yeah, they call that state preemption law. So basically, state law preempts local law, sort of in the same way that people talk about the supremacy clause in the Constitution, which says that federal laws preempt state laws or are superior to state laws. So you can't pass a state law that nullifies a federal law. So it's a whole debate that was had during the Civil War era, when states tried to nullify federal statutes. But basically that's what it is, but at the state level. So most states have a preemption law that says you cannot make any gun laws that are stricter than the state laws. And so Colorado now has flipped that on its head. There are a few exceptions, right? New York, for instance, and that's why New York City's laws tend to be much stricter than the rest of the state. But Chicago is usually the case as well. But In Colorado, they flipped it. Now you can't pass any local ordinances that are stricter or are less strict than state law, but you can pass local ordinance that are stricter. Virginia has done this to a lesser degree, where they've allowed localities to pass to implement their own gun-free zones in places like government buildings and parks, or permitted gatherings. So like protests or farmers markets, things like that.
Right.
So there has been something of a movement in the gun control space by gun control advocates to get rid of preemption laws. There's been a lot of legal fights over this over the years. That's what I was alluding to earlier with sometimes cities will pass their own ordinances anyway.
Yeah.
Even if one of these laws exists, as a way of kind of challenging them. And so there's been an ongoing fight over this for a long time, but Colorado changed their law, and now there are local ordinances that are legal under state law, but these new federal cases are showing that even if that's the case, you still can't violate federal law, or violate the Second Amendment.
The Constitution, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was going to say, generally speaking, I prefer the government that affects my day-to-day life to be as close to me as possible. The further away it gets, so my municipality and my county, I'd like them deciding most things that affect my life because they live here, because they're familiar with what life is like here, what the values of the people who live here. And the further away you get up to the state and then the federal government, in this case, we have a dog, excuse me. In this case, I'm actually very glad that the federal government was able to intervene because, the Second Amendment is the Second Amendment. It is a federal issue. So I'm glad this worked out the way that it did. Do you know of any other cases around the country that are kind of heading in this direction?
So in this case, actually, there's a little more here because there were a couple other localities that passed the same sort of AR-15 ban. And so after this ruling, which is the second one in the state that went the same way under two different judges, they've agreed, these other localities in Colorado, with AR bans. And there's also a magazine ban attached to all these as well.
Okay.
And that's stricter than the state one, because Colorado has a state ban of, I believe, 15. And I believe these were all 10 rounds. So they went a little bit further down on that part as well. But all those localities have now agreed to stay enforcement of their bans and consolidate all the cases that were individually filed against them. So they're, instead of having the same basic ruling come down 4 or 5 times and have to fight this individually and across, a couple different judges or jurisdictions, they've agreed to consolidate them all. They're staying enforcement. So this order really has effects across more than just the county of Boulder. It's also practically having effect on a number of other Colorado jurisdictions too. So, we'll certainly keep an eye on what ultimately happens with this. But, this was a preliminary injunction. So, it's a temporary restraining order, which has a fairly high standard for being issued. The judge has to find that there's a substantial likelihood of success on the merits of the case in order to issue a temporary restraining order. So, this isn't a full case. It hasn't been fully argued yet, but basically the judge said that the facts before them were substantial enough to justify blocking enforcement of this law while the trial goes on.
Right. And
so that's usually a really bad sign for the government in the case.
Yeah.
But yeah, I still think it's a bigger deal because it foreshadows what is likely to happen in the California and Maryland cases, which are going to affect way more people, obviously, than a couple of jurisdictions in Colorado. Not that obviously, if you live in those jurisdictions, it's it has a huge effect on you in your life, and that's important. But I think it's telling in that these judges aren't, Trump appointed or Bush appointed judges. These are Biden and Obama appointed judges, and they're still coming down on the side that assault weapons bans can't survive the new Bruin standard that the Supreme Court has put down.
Very interesting. Was there anything else about this case you think our listeners need to know?
I think that, that's the biggest takeaway. I mean, it also, again, foreshadows the struggle of these locality bans or these local bans and the fight against preemption, because like I said, there's been a long-term fight over this concept, this legal concept of preemption, which, gun rights advocates have argued prevents the sort of spider web of different laws across the same state, so that, it might be legal for you to have your gun where you live, but if you drive to the next city over in the same state, you might be a felon.
Yeah.
Right. That's the idea behind it. But, there's been a long fight over this, and now it's starting to feel like maybe it didn't matter so much because of how Bruin is going to affect every gun law in the country, regardless of whether it was passed by a city or a state.
Yeah, Bruin was a watershed for sure. Folks, if you are lamenting the lack of down the middle, fair, sane, sober reporting on the Second Amendment and on all things firearms related, go over to thereload.com, and carefully consider getting a membership. As I state every week, Stephen relies on his members to fund his important work. I don't know anyone else who's doing what he does. So give him a look and consider getting a membership. We'd appreciate it. And if you've listened this far, don't forget to give us a rating and a review on Apple or Spotify or wherever you listen. 5 stars, please. And you can include the name Gutowski, Gutowski. And every time I get one of those, I shoot it over to Stephen, and he just giggles like a schoolgirl.
Yeah, yes, like a schoolgirl. That's a good description of it.
All right, folks. We will see you next week, Stephen. Take care.
Thank you.
Hey, friends, this is John Correa. If you like the podcast, if it is bringing you value, do me a favor and leave us a rating and a review. It really helps us out.